Captain Veltar had made this same trip 47 times before. His ship, the Serene Current, carried goods between the big worlds and the small colonies on the edge of space. It was boring work, but it paid well and kept him away from the politics of the core systems. The route through Sector 7 Alpha was always peaceful. Nothing interesting ever happened here. The stars were old and quiet, and most planets were empty rocks floating in the dark. That was why Veltar liked it. No pirates, no military patrols, no customs inspectors asking too many questions. His ship was not built for fighting. The Serene Current was a trader vessel, long and thin, with huge cargo bays and engines designed for long trips rather than speed. Veltar's people, the Zephyrians, were merchants first and always. They had 4 arms, which made them excellent at handling multiple tasks, and they could see colors that other species could not. This made them very good at spotting valuable minerals and rare materials. Veltar was checking the navigation charts when his communications officer started making worried clicking sounds. Officer Jekfa was a crystalline, one of the rock-like beings from the inner systems. She was very smart and never got excited about anything. That was why the clicking sounds made Veltar nervous. Captain Jekfa said in her slow, careful voice, "I am receiving a signal." "What kind of signal?" Veltar asked. He moved 2 of his arms to the control panels, while his other 2 arms continued working on the charts. Unknown origin, unknown language. The mathematics suggest intelligence, but the patterns are very strange. Jekfa's crystal body flashed different colors as she worked. "Captain, this signal comes from the 3rd planet of system designation 7 Alpha Gamma." Veltar stopped working on his charts. System 7 Alpha Gamma was marked in red on all navigation charts. Red meant dangerous. Red meant stay away. "That is a Class 1 to Deathworld," Veltar said quietly. Jekfa's crystals flashed bright orange, which meant she was worried. "Yes, Captain. But something is broadcasting from its surface. The signal is strong and directed toward space. Someone or something wants to make contact." Veltar used all 4 arms to bring up the sensor data on his main screen. The planet looked terrible. It was covered in white ice at the top and bottom, with green and brown patches in the middle. Huge storms moved across the surface like living things. The whole planet was wrapped in a thin layer of gases that would kill most life forms. "The gravity is 1.2 standard," Jekfa reported. "The surface is covered in dihydrogen monoxide in liquid form. The atmosphere contains 21% reactive oxygen." Veltar shuddered with all 4 arms. Liquid dihydrogen monoxide was one of the most dangerous substances in the galaxy. It could dissolve almost anything. Reactive oxygen could burn through metal and flesh alike. No sane being would live on such a world. "Are you certain the signal comes from the surface?" he asked. "Yes, Captain. Multiple transmission points across the planet's major landmasses. And Captain, there is something else. The signals show signs of artificial construction, metal structures, energy readings consistent with advanced technology. This was impossible. The Galactic Council had been mapping space for 3,000 years. They knew about every species, every civilization, every world where intelligent life existed. Deathworlds were rare, but they were always empty. Nothing could survive on them long enough to build cities or develop technology. The Galactic Council's first contact protocols were very clear. Any unknown signal from an unknown species had to be investigated. This was how new civilizations joined the galactic community. But the protocols assumed that new species would be found on normal worlds, not on planets that could kill you just by breathing the air. Veltar made his decision. Set course for the planet. Keep us at a safe distance. If anything goes wrong, we jump to hyperspace immediately. Serene Current moved closer to the deadly world. As they approached, their sensors picked up more details. The planet had artificial satellites in orbit. Not many, but enough to show that whoever lived there had space technology. The satellites looked strange, though. They were covered in metal plates and had no decorative elements at all. They looked like they were built for war. Captain Jekfa said, her voice even more careful than usual, "I am detecting movement. Multiple objects rising from the planet's surface." Veltara's hearts began beating faster. All Zephyrians had 2 hearts, and right now both of them were working hard. What kind of objects? Ships. Small, fast, and heading directly toward us. The main screen showed 6 vessels climbing up from the planet's atmosphere. They were dark gray, with sharp angles and no smooth curves. Like the satellites they looked. Built for fighting rather than beauty. Most civilized ships were works of art, designed to show the culture and creativity of their builders. These ships looked like weapons. "Incoming transmission," Jekfe announced. "Put it through," Veltar ordered. The voice that came through their speakers was unlike anything Veltar had ever heard. It was deep and rough, with strange vowel sounds and hard consonants. But the words were in perfect galactic standard, the common language used by all civilized species. This is Earth Defense Command to unknown vessel. Identify yourself and state your intentions in our system. Veltar nearly fell out of his captain's chair. The beings on the Death World not only had space travel, but they spoke the galactic common tongue. How was that possible? It took most species decades of contact with galactic civilization to learn galactic standard properly. "This is Captain Veltar of the merchant vessel Serene Current," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "We received your transmission and came to investigate. We represent the Galactic Council and come in peace." There was a pause. Then the rough voice came back, but now it sounded more interested than threatening. "Galactic Council? That is interesting. We have been monitoring galactic communications for several years, but this is our first direct contact. I am Commander Jake Sullivan of Earth Defense Command. Welcome to the Sol System." "Earth Defense Command," Veltar repeated. The name suggested a military organization. Most civilized species had explorers or diplomats make first contact, not soldiers. That is correct. "We are responsible for protecting our world and our people. Your ship appears to be unarmed, and your intentions seem peaceful, so you are welcome. Here, however, we will need to escort you to a safe orbital position while we arrange proper contact protocols." Veltar looked at his navigation display. The 6 ships from the planet were now surrounding the Serene Current in a perfect formation. They had moved into position without him even noticing. These beings, whatever they were, knew how to handle space combat. "We understand," Veltar said. "We will follow your lead." As the strange ships guided them toward a stable orbit around the impossible Death World, Veltar realized that everything the galaxy thought it knew about life, survival, and civilization was about to change. Somewhere on that toxic, violent planet lived beings who had not only survived impossible conditions, but had thrived enough to build starships and learn galactic languages. The Galactic Council was going to be very surprised when they heard about this. Veltar just hoped they would be the good kind of surprise, not the kind that started wars. Through his viewport, he could see the blue and green world turning slowly below them. It looked beautiful from space, but he knew the surface was full of dangers that could kill him in minutes. Yet somehow, the beings who called themselves humans had made it their home. What kind of species could turn a death world into home? The meeting took place 3 days later aboard the human vessel USS Defiance. Ambassador Lisa Martinez waited in the docking bay as the Galactic Council's shuttle approached. She had been chosen to represent Earth because she spoke 7 alien languages and understood their customs. But nothing in her training had prepared her. For this moment, the shuttle that docked was beautiful in the way that all galactic ships were beautiful. It had smooth curves and glowing panels that showed artistic patterns. Metal was polished to a mirror shine, and small decorative elements showed the craftsmanship of its builders. It looked like jewelry floating in space. The USS Defiance looked very different. It was gray and angular, with thick armor plating and weapon systems that served no decorative purpose. The corridors were lined with damage control stations and emergency supplies. Everything was built to be fixed quickly. During combat, it was not pretty, but it was strong. Senior diplomat Korthok emerged from the beautiful shuttle and stepped onto the human ship. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that could see in many different light spectrums. As people, the hegemony had been handling first contact meetings for 800 years. They were very good at it. Korthok looked around the docking bay with interest. Human crew members moved efficiently through their tasks, checking systems and maintaining equipment. They wore simple gray uniforms with no decoration except for small patches that showed their names and duties. Their movements were quick and purposeful. "Welcome aboard the Defiance," Ambassador Martinez said in perfect hegemony formal speech. "We are honored by your presence." Korthak was surprised. Humans had learned his language very quickly and well. Most species took years to master the subtle tones and gestures of hegemony speech. "The honor is ours," he replied. "Your species has accomplished something remarkable. We are eager to learn more about your people." Martinez led him through the ship's corridors. As they walked, Korthak noticed that everything was designed for efficiency rather than comfort. The walls were covered with diagrams showing emergency procedures. Signs in multiple human languages pointed to escape pods, medical stations, and weapon storage areas. "Your ship is quite practical," Korthak observed. "We build things to last," Martinez replied, "and to fight when we have to." They reached the main conference room, where other humans were waiting. Dr. Ben Hayes was the ship's medical officer, a tall man with steady hands and sharp eyes. Colonel Steve Murphy represented the military, standing near the large windows that looked out at Earth. His posture was relaxed, but Korthak could sense the controlled strength in his movements. The cultural exchange began with basic information. Korthak explained how galactic civilization worked. There were 43 member species in the Galactic Council. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and worked together to solve problems. Wars were rare, and most conflicts were resolved through careful negotiation. "Your system sounds very peaceful," Martinez said. "We would like to be part of it." "That is why we are here," Korthak replied. "But first, we must understand your species better. May we see examples of your culture and your capabilities?" Dr. Hayes activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images of Earth appeared in the air between them. Korthak watched as the display showed human cities, human art, and human achievements. But what caught his attention were the scenes of humans doing impossible things. The first image showed a human jumping out of an aircraft at high altitude, falling through the atmosphere with only a piece of cloth to slow his descent. Korthak's skin turned a darker shade of blue, which meant he was frightened. "This human appears to be falling to his death," he said. "That's skydiving," Dr. Hayes explained. "We do it for fun." The next image showed humans diving deep into the ocean without breathing equipment, swimming down to depths where the water pressure should crush their bodies. Then came images of humans climbing straight up the faces of mountains, using only their hands and feet to grip the rock. "These are recreational activities?" Korthak asked. "Some of our favorite ones," Colonel Murphy said from his position by the window. "Where we come from, everything tries to kill you, whether animals, diseases, earthquakes, volcanoes. We learn to fight back. Now we do it for sport." Korthak studied the medical data that Dr. Hayes provided. Human biology was unlike anything in the galactic databases. They could survive in temperatures that would freeze or cook most species. They could function in air with very little oxygen or air with too much oxygen. Their bodies had backup systems. For almost every vital function, your species practices deliberate body modification, Korthak noted. "You expose yourselves to harmful conditions to become stronger." "We call it training," Murphy replied. "If you want to survive on Earth, you have to be tough. If you want to thrive, you have to be tougher than everything else." The display showed human athletes running incredible distances, lifting weights that should be impossible for their size, and competing in sports that looked more like combat than games. Then it showed human explorers in the most dangerous places. On Earth, from the frozen poles to the deepest jungles to the hottest deserts. "This is how your people relax?" Korthak asked. "We have a saying," Martinez explained. "It doesn't kill you makes you stronger." We've been living by that rule for 200,000 years, but the most shocking revelation came when Dr. Hayes showed the historical data. Humans had faced extinction-level events multiple times in their history, ice ages that should have wiped out all large life forms, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years, asteroid impacts that changed the climate of the entire planet. "Your species survived all of these disasters?" Korthak asked. "Survived and adapted," Hayes confirmed. "Each time we came back stronger and smarter. We learned to prepare for the worst and hope for the best." The display showed human cities built in places where no rational being would choose to live. Cities in areas where the ground shook regularly from earthquakes. Cities where hurricanes struck every year. Cities in deserts where the temperature could kill an unprotected person. In ours, you build your homes in the most dangerous places on your world, Korthak observed. Those are often the places with the best resources, Murphy explained. Volcanic soil is very fertile for growing food. Coastlines give access to ocean resources even though they're dangerous during storms. Mountain areas have clean water and mineral deposits, even though they're cold and hard to reach. We don't avoid danger, Martinez added. We learn to live with it and use it to our advantage. Korthak was beginning to understand why this species had developed so differently from all others in the galaxy. Most civilizations grew up on worlds that were comfortable and safe. They developed technology to make their lives easier and more pleasant. Humans had developed on a world that was constantly trying to kill them. They had created technology to help them fight and survive. What about your conflicts with other humans? Korthak asked. Do you fight among yourselves as well? The humans exchanged glances. We have had wars, Martinez admitted. Many wars. But we have also learned to work together when we face common threats. Our species is at its best when we are united against a challenge that threatens all of us. Colonel Murphy moved away from the window and joined the group around the holographic display. Diplomat Korthak, I want you to understand something important. We don't fight because we enjoy violence. We fight because we refuse to give up. Our world taught us that surrender means death, so we never surrender. As the day continued, Korthak began to realize that humanity represented something entirely new in galactic civilization. They were not just another species seeking membership in the Council. They were warriors who had turned one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds into their home. They were survivors who had faced impossible odds and won. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for such a species. 3 weeks later, the message arrived from the Hegemony Council. Admiral Katie Brooks read it twice before calling her senior staff to the briefing room aboard the USS Pioneer. The Council had made their decision about humanity's request to join galactic civilization. They want us to take the trials, Brooks announced to her officers, something called the Trials of Civilization. Apparently, every species has to pass them before joining the Galactic Council. Chief Engineer Dr. Ryan Carter looked up from his tablet. What kind of trials? For tests, Brooks replied, reading from the official message. Technology, culture, diplomacy, and survival. The message says 47 species have tried these tests in the past 1,000 years. Most failed on their first attempt. Captain Amanda Foster leaned forward in her chair. What happens if we fail? We wait another century and try again, Brooks said. But I don't think we're going to fail. The testing facility orbited Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Hegemony. It was huge, the size of a small moon, and made entirely of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Ships from dozens of species docked at its many ports, bringing diplomats, scientists, and observers to watch the trials. The human delegation arrived in a small fleet of 5 ships. They looked rough and practical compared to the elegant vessels of other species, but the aliens who saw them pass gave them respectful distance. Word had spread through the galaxy about the Deathworlders and their unusual capabilities. Test. Administrator Quexel met them at the main docking port. She was a tall, graceful being with silver skin and large eyes that changed color based on her emotions. Her people, the Nexari, had designed and built the testing facility centuries ago. Welcome, humans, she said in careful galactic standard. We are curious to see how your species approaches our evaluations. The first trial was technology. Each species had to demonstrate their mastery of energy, space travel, and manufacturing. Most candidates spent days preparing elaborate displays of their most advanced inventions. Dr. Carter asked for a room full of spare parts and broken equipment. I don't understand, Quexel said. Do you not wish to show us your finest achievements? Is how we work, Carter replied simply. Give us a problem and things to fix it with. We'll show you what human technology can do. The test began with a challenge that had stumped several species. The facility's main fusion reactor was operating. At only 60% efficiency, due to a design flaw that no one could solve. Previous candidates had built their own reactors or created theoretical solutions that might work someday. Carter put on his work clothes and crawled inside the reactor housing with a toolbox and a roll of duct tape. This is highly irregular. Quexel observed as Carter began removing panels and rewiring connections. This reactor design is thousands of years old. You cannot simply modify it. Sure I can, Carter replied from inside the machinery. The problem is that the energy flow is uneven. These old crystals create natural resistance patterns. I just need to balance them out. He worked for 6 hours using spare parts from a dozen different technologies and materials that were never meant to work together. The other observers watched in horror as he jury-rigged connections and bypassed safety systems that had been built into the design. When he finished, the reactor was running at 127% efficiency. That should not be possible, Quexel said, staring at the readings. The configuration is completely unstable. It's not unstable, Carter corrected her, wiping grease from his hands. It's flexible. When something changes, the system adapts instead of breaking. Sometimes you don't need perfect engineering. Sometimes you just need engineering that works. The cultural trial was held in a grand amphitheater that could hold thousands of beings. Previous candidates had presented art galleries, philosophical discussions, and carefully choreographed displays of their social harmony. The Nexari expected humans to do something similar. Captain Foster walked onto the stage alone, carrying only a small datapad. Honored observers, she began, "My species has a saying, the truth will set you free. Today I want to share the truth about humanity." What followed was unlike any cultural presentation the Council had ever seen. Foster showed them humanity's real history, with no editing and no attempt to hide the ugly parts. She showed them wars that had killed millions, natural disasters that had destroyed entire civilizations, and mistakes that had nearly ended their species. But she also showed them recovery. She showed humans rebuilding their cities after earthquakes, replanting forests after fires, and working together to solve problems that seemed impossible. She showed them art created in the darkest times, music written during wars, and stories that gave hope when hope seemed lost. "We are not a perfect species," Foster said, as images of human achievements and failures played behind her. "We fight. We make mistakes, and we sometimes hurt each other. But we learn from our mistakes, and we never give up." The audience was completely silent. Most species hid their shameful history when trying to join the Council. They presented only their greatest achievements and their most noble moments. No one had ever stood before the galaxy and admitted their flaws so openly, Counselor Yithra spoke from her position in the front row. "Your species appears to glorify conflict. We see wars throughout your history. You don't glorify conflict," Foster replied calmly. "We're just honest about it. When your world tries to kill you every day, you learn that sometimes fighting is the only way to survive. When other people threaten your family, you learn that some things are worth fighting for. When the universe seems to hate you, you learn to fight for hope itself." She paused and looked out at the thousands of beings watching her. "But we also learned something else. Fighting alone is not enough. You have to fight for something. You have to fight together. And when the fighting is over, you have to build something better than what was there before." The diplomacy trial was postponed when Lieutenant Commander Sam Rodriguez accidentally solved 3 interstellar trade disputes while asking for directions to the bathroom. His practical suggestions for sharing resources and dividing responsibilities were so simple and effective that 2 species immediately signed peace agreements. They had been negotiating for decades. The survival trial was designed to test how well a species could handle extreme conditions. Candidates were placed in a dangerous environment and had to demonstrate their ability to adapt and overcome challenges. The test usually took several days to complete. Rodriguez finished it in 42 minutes. He not only completed the course, but also carried a disabled Nexari observer to safety when the alien's breathing equipment failed. Along the way, he stopped to repair 3 critical system failures that were part of the test obstacles, leaving the course in better condition than when he started. "How did you move so quickly through the lava maze?" Quexel asked as Rodriguez emerged from the testing chamber. Lava Rodriguez looked confused. That was just hot rock. We've got places like that all over Earth. You just watch where you step and don't touch anything glowing. In the toxic gas chamber? I held my breath. 2 minutes isn't that long. What about the gravity distortion field? That was the fun part. Rodriguez grinned. It was like rock climbing, but in 3 dimensions. My daughter would love this place. Test Administrator Quexel looked at her readings again. According to the sensors, Rodriguez had just completed challenges that should have been impossible. For any known life form, he had done it while helping others and fixing problems along the way, and he thought it was fun. I believe, she said slowly, that we need to discuss your species' definition of the word extreme. The emergency signal reached human space at 3 a.m, Earth time. Fleet Admiral Tim Bradley was pulled from his sleep by the urgent beeping of his communicator. The message was short and terrifying. The Zerathi Empire had begun a full invasion of the Outer Rim territories. Bradley dressed quickly and hurried to the command center beneath Geneva. The main screen showed a map of the galaxy with red zones spreading like an infection across the outer systems. 12 colony worlds had gone silent in the first 6 hours of the attack. How bad is it? Bradley asked his intelligence officer. Commander Janet Park. Very bad, sir, Park replied, pulling up detailed reports. The Zerathi launched simultaneous attacks on 18 different systems. They're using their new bioships, and they're not taking prisoners. Bradley studied the tactical display. The Zerathi Empire had been the galaxy's biggest threat for 30 years. They were a warrior species that believed the galaxy belonged to the strong. Their ships were grown rather than built, using living tissue that could repair itself and adapt to different weapons. Previous wars with the Zerathi had ended in stalemates. The Hegemony Council's strategy was always the same: defend key positions, minimize losses, and negotiate a peace treaty that gave the Zerathi some territory in exchange for stopping their attacks. This time felt different. The attacks were more coordinated, more brutal. The Zerathi were not just raiding for resources or territory, they were trying to destroy entire civilizations. What's the Council's response? Bradley asked. Standard protocol, Park replied. Strategic withdrawal, too. Defensive positions? They're abandoning the outer colonies to protect the core worlds. Bradley looked at the display again. Each red dot represented millions of innocent beings who were being left to die because the Council believed in careful, measured responses to aggression. Get me a direct line to President Walsh, Bradley ordered. 5 minutes later, Earth's president appeared on the secure channel. Patricia Walsh looked tired but determined. She had been in office for 3 years, and this was her first major military crisis. What do you need, Admiral? She asked without preamble. Permission to intervene, Bradley replied. The hegemony forces are retreating, but we can help the colonies. What are you proposing? Send the Third Fleet to Cathara. It's the biggest colony under attack, and if we can break the siege there, it might stop the Zerathi advance. President. Walsh was quiet for a moment. Admiral, we've been part of galactic civilization for less than a year. Are we ready for this kind of action? Ma'am, people are dying right now while the Council debates strategy. We have the ships and the crews. The question is whether we have the will. Rules of engagement? Weapons free. We protect the innocent and stop the aggressors. Same as always. Approved. Bring our people home, Admiral. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace at Cathara was small by galactic standards. 7. Ships ranging from the massive battleship USS Vengeance to the quick destroyers that served as scouts and raiders. But their arrival changed everything about the battle. The Zerathi had surrounded the planet with over 200 bioships. Wow. Creatures looked like giant insects crossed with sea monsters, all teeth and claws and acid-dripping weapons. They had been pounding the planetary defenses for 18 hours, and the shields were failing. Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the heavy cruiser USS Vendetta, leading a squadron of 6 destroyers in a high-speed attack run. Her ships moved differently than the elegant hegemony vessels, which maintained careful formations and optimal firing solutions. Human ships fought like wolves hunting together. Vendetta Squadron, this is Pack Leader, Morgan announced over the tactical channel. "We're going in fast and hard. Follow my lead and watch each other's backs." The squadron dove into the Zirithi formation at speeds that should have been impossible. They used the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot around obstacles, shared targeting data in real time, and adapted their tactics based on how the enemy responded. Human vessels came a worried transmission from Hegemony Fleet Coordinator Zalthip. "Your current approach exceeds all safety parameters. You will sustain heavy casualties." "Negative, Hegemony Command," Morgan replied, as her ships tore through the Zirithi line like bullets through paper. "Safe is a relative concept. We're about to show these bugs what dangerous really looks like." The Zirithi had never faced anything like human naval tactics. Their bioships were powerful and could heal from damage, but they were used to fighting enemies who followed predictable patterns. The humans fought like their homeworld had taught them to fight, with no pattern except winning. USS Ranger, under Captain Bob Martinez, led a flanking attack that used the planet's magnetic field to mask their approach. The destroyer USS Falcon, commanded by Captain Amy Chen, in an attack run through the middle of the enemy formation that should have been suicide. But her ship was so fast and so agile that the Zirithi couldn't track her. The battle lasted 18 hours. Human casualties were lighter than anyone expected. 3 destroyers damaged, 0 ships destroyed. The Zirithi lost over half their fleet. The survivors were fleeing toward their own territory in full retreat. But the real shock came during the rescue. Operations afterward, Captain Rodriguez led the boarding parties that searched the damaged Zirithi bioships for survivors. What they found were enemy warriors in a state of complete psychological collapse. The massive, terrifying creatures that had conquered dozens of worlds were huddled in their ship's corners, making high-pitched whining sounds. "They keep saying the same thing," reported translator specialist Karen White. "They say we fight like the planet itself is trying to kill us." Rodriguez looked at the cowering Zirithi warriors. These beings had terrorized the galaxy for decades. They were 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, and had claws that could tear through steel. But they were shaking with fear. "That's because our planet was trying to kill us," Rodriguez explained to them in their own language. "Every day for 200,000 years, we learned to fight back. We learned to win." Word of the Battle of Cathara spread through the galaxy. Faster than hyperspace communication, the species that had spent 30 years in stalemate with the Zirithi had been defeated in a single day by the newcomers from the Deathworld, the Zirithi. Empire's response was immediate and unprecedented. They recalled all their fleets to their core systems and sent a message to the Hegemony Council requesting immediate peace negotiations. They also sent a separate message to Earth's government. The message was simple: "We surrender to the Deathworlders. Please don't come to our worlds." 3 other aggressive species that had been causing problems in different parts of the galaxy suddenly opened diplomatic channels with the Council. All of them mentioned changed strategic considerations and new factors in galactic politics. Admiral Bradley stood in his command center, watching the tactical display as human ships returned from their successful mission. The galaxy had changed in a single day. For 30 years, aggressive species had pushed against the hegemony's peaceful nature, taking more territory with each conflict because they knew the Council would always choose negotiation over total war. Now they knew there was a species in the galaxy that would fight back without hesitation, without restraint, and without mercy for those who threatened innocent lives. The galaxy had just learned that humans didn't just survive on their death world. They had learned to think like their death world. That made them the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. 6 months after the Battle of Cathara, Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime had been expanded twice to hold representatives from every known species. They had all come to witness something that had never happened before: a complete restructuring of how galactic civilization worked. The hall was filled with beings of every shape and size imaginable. Tall, elegant Nexari sat next to crystalline Jekfa and 4-armed Zephyrians. In the far corners, species that breathed different atmospheres watched through protective barriers. Everyone wanted to see what the humans would say. Martinez walked to the center of the hall wearing a simple blue suit that marked her as Earth's representative. She carried no weapons, no ceremonial objects, and no advanced technology. She looked very ordinary compared to the elaborate costumes and formal decorations worn by other ambassadors. But everyone in the hall knew that this ordinary-looking human represented the species that had changed everything. Honored delegates, Martinez began in clear galactic standard. 6 months ago, my species was new to your community. We were the unknown Deathworlders from the Outer Rim. Today we stand before you as equals, as partners, and as friends. She paused and looked around the massive hall. But we also stand before you as protectors. A ripple of movement went through the audience. Some species shifted nervously in their seats. Others leaned forward with interest. The word protectors meant different things to different beings. The question before us today, Martinez continued, is not whether humanity belongs in galactic civilization. We are here, we are not leaving, and we have proven our capabilities. The question is whether galactic civilization is ready to accept that there are many different ways to achieve peace. Counselor Yithra stood up in the front section. She was the senior representative of the traditional approach to galactic politics. Ambassador Martinez, your species has demonstrated impressive military capabilities. But civilization is built on more than the ability to fight. You are absolutely right, Martinez agreed. Civilization is built on the willingness to protect what you have built. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace through careful negotiation and strategic withdrawal. This approach has many benefits, but it also has costs. The main display behind Martinez lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red zones showed areas that had been abandoned to aggressive species over the centuries. Each red zone had once been home to peaceful civilizations that were no longer free. The Zerathi Empire controlled 43 systems before we intervened, Martinez said. They had enslaved the populations of 17 worlds. The Void Reapers had destroyed 8 colonies in the past decade. The Iron Claws had been raiding trade routes for 20 years. She let the numbers sink in before continuing. All of these problems were solved through traditional diplomacy. Treaties were signed, borders were redrawn, aggressive species were given territory and resources in exchange for temporary peace. But the aggression never stopped, just moved to new targets. Diplomat Korthok rose from his seat. Ambassador, are you suggesting that our peaceful methods are wrong? I am suggesting that your peaceful methods are incomplete, Martinez replied. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice, and sometimes justice requires strength. The display changed to show the current state of the galaxy. The red zones were much smaller now. 3 major aggressive species had withdrawn to their home systems. 7 minor raiding groups had disbanded. 14 trade routes that had been closed for years were now safe for civilian traffic. Since the Battle of Cathara, galactic commerce has increased by 30%, Martinez reported. Colony applications have tripled. Species that had been living in fear are now planning for the future. An elderly hegemony counselor named Velkar spoke from the back of the hall. But at what cost, Ambassador? Your methods are effective, but they are also violent. How do we know that humanity will not become the next aggressive empire? It was the question everyone had been thinking, but few had dared to ask. Martinez had been expecting it. Because of who we are, she answered simply. You have studied our history. You know that humans fight most fiercely when we are defending something we care about. We care about freedom. We care about justice. We care about the right of peaceful beings to live without fear. She gestured to the human delegation seated in the side section. Look at our representatives. Captain Rodriguez commands an exploration vessel, not a warship. Dr. Hayes runs a medical station that treats patients from 47 different species. Engineer Carter builds bridges and power plants, not weapons. We did not come to the galaxy to conquer, we came to build. But we will fight anyone who tries to stop us from building. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Some species argued that humanity's methods were too dangerous, too unpredictable for civilized society. Others pointed out that human intervention had ended conflicts that had been dragging on for decades, saving millions of lives. In the end, the solution came from an unexpected source. Captain Rodriguez, who had been quietly listening to the debates, asked for permission to speak. "Honored delegates," he said, standing up in the human section, "you are making this too complicated. You want to know if humans can be trusted with power? You want to know if we will abuse our capabilities?" He walked down to the center of the hall, moving with the easy confidence of someone who had never been afraid of anything. "Here is my answer. We do not want power over you. We want power to protect you. There is a difference." The hall was completely silent. "My daughter is 8 years old," Rodriguez continued. "She goes to school with children from 6 different species. They play together, learn together, and dream about exploring the galaxy together. That is the future we are fighting for. We are not your rulers. We are not your conquerors. We are your neighbors. And when something threatens our neighborhood, we deal with it." The final agreement was called the Terran Doctrine. Humanity would serve as the galaxy's rapid response force, intervening in situations where traditional diplomacy had failed and innocent lives were at risk. Human ships would patrol the trade routes and respond to distress calls. Human Marines would be available to rescue civilians from hostile situations. In exchange, humanity would have full membership in the Galactic Council with the same rights and responsibilities as any other species. They would participate in trade, cultural exchange, and scientific cooperation. They would also submit to Council oversight for any military action involving member species. The ceremony ended with the signing of the new Galactic Charter. As representatives from dozens of species affixed their seals to the document, Martinez felt a sense of completion that she had never experienced before. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy. Later that evening, Martinez stood on the observation deck of Terra Station, humanity's first permanent installation in Council space. The station orbited a neutral world halfway between Earth and Nexus Prime, serving as an embassy, hospital, and rescue coordination center. Dr. Hayes joined her at the large windows that looked out at the stars. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, using an old Earth expression. "I was thinking about home," Martinez replied. "About how Earth shaped us into who we are, about how a death world taught us to value life." They watched as ships from across the galaxy docked at the station. Merchants, diplomats, scientists, and travelers from dozens of species, all moving freely through space that had been controlled by pirates and raiders just months before. "You know what the galaxy gave us?" Hayes said. "Purpose. For 200,000 years, we fought to survive. Now we get to fight for something bigger." In the distance, a human patrol ship passed by on its regular route through the sector. It was painted white with red crosses, marking it as a rescue vessel rather than a warship. But everyone in the galaxy knew that those rescue ships carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet if necessary. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. The best way to keep the peace was to make sure that those who threatened it knew there would be consequences. And the Deathworlders from Sol System had become very good at delivering consequences. As Martinez watched the stars, she smiled. Humanity had come a long way from the small blue planet where everything tried to kill them. Now they were the ones, making sure that nothing could kill the dreams of freedom and peace that filled the galaxy. The universe was a big, dangerous place. It was a little bit safer now that the humans were watching.